Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to call to order the November 20th meeting of the Downtown Design Review Board. Will the board please introduce themselves?
Cameron Bolin, AIA representative.
Rick Blackburn, Historic Zoning Commission.
Matthew DeBard-Laban, Downtown Knoxville Alliance.
Perry Childress, East Tennessee Community Design Center.
Laura Lynn, Downtown Resident Representative.
Jared Worsham, Downtown Resident Representative.
Suzanne Taravella, Knoxville Neighborhood Representative.
Lindsay Crockett, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Josh Wright, Urban Design Representative.
Chris Ford, Downtown Business Representative.
Tony Allen, Downtown Development Rep.
Melinda Woolert, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Christina McGrath's Tillery, City Law Department.
Mark Reel, Plans Review and Inspections.
Thank you, everybody. The minutes of the October 16th meeting are in your packet. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I do. I have a correction.
Okay.
Perry Childress is listed both as present and excused. And while he's fantastic and do many things. So I move to approve the minutes subject to that correction.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. All right, Lindsay, can you give us the staff report, please?
Yes, there was one level 1 COA issued since the last meeting. Says a minor alteration on the Pembroke building. It's the proposed installation of 2 new windows in existing windows that were previously infilled, and the new windows will have a size, design, and muntin arrangements to match the existing.
All right, thank you. We will move on to our certificates of appropriateness. The first case is 100 South Gay Street, case number 11B24DT.
Okay. So I apologize for that incorrect title on this slide, but this is 100 South Gay Street. So the project is an exterior rehabilitation to an area below the Jackson Avenue ramp. You can see that in the lower left image to create a new exterior pre-function space for the Emporium building. This includes a box office and a new entry to the basement of the 100 South Gay Street building. So the scope of work, and I'll illustrate this via the renderings, and those are the elevation drawings, includes a new full light entry door with a transom, new transom windows installed in the existing infilled openings, which you can see here on the elevation drawings, and then a new textured masonry and full wall on the leftmost bay. There's also new screening proposed via textured masonry knee wall and with a decorative wood screen wall above. Some of the panels are operable, so you can see that here, and some are fixed. There's new exterior lighting and new signage to be installed on the fixed screen section above the entry. We've got some night views here, and I can run through all of the renderings if necessary. So the associated building is 100 South Gay Street. The majority of the work will be concentrated in the right-of-way below the ramp. Overall, the project meets the guidelines as it activates an underutilized space, enhances pedestrian entrance with new windows and an entrance, and then a creative screening solution. The screening is complementary but differentiated from the existing ramp and the masonry building. The sign placement is appropriate within the guidelines as a wall sign on a signboard, and revisions to the lettering could be approved administratively. So staff's recommending approval of 11B24DT as submitted.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant here? Please give us your name and address.
Yes, Chad Bodker, McCarty Holsapple McCarty, 550 West Main Street, Suite 300, Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm representing the Arts and Culture Alliance. I have Lisa Zenny, the Executive Director of the Arts and Culture Alliance, here to answer any questions, but I think Lindsay did a great job kind of running through the submittal, so I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I thought, Lindsay, you mentioned that the transom on the left side was infilled with glass. Is that going to be glass, or is it just going to be open air?
So what may be slightly confusing, basically multiple layers of planar elements that we're dealing with here. When we're talking about the transom windows, the existing clear story windows, they're in the existing brick masonry building of the Emporium,
Got it.
which is kind of in shadow way back in the back there.
Got it.
There are existing openings that have been bricked up, and so we're proposing to open those back up and put windows in place. So.
But the
And then-
facade material is open at the top on that left side.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
So when you're back toward the street, the screening element is in front of that and it's open above. We're actually not allowed to touch anything on the bridge. So everything that you're seeing here is essentially a freestanding structure. So it doesn't actually extend up and touch the bridge. It's held off by
Yeah.
4 or 6 inches here or there. So that's why you're seeing some of that opening at the top. The screening element does two things. One, it's a security element for when the space is not in use to discourage urban campers from hanging out in that space. But at the same time, we want the kind of pre-function area to be open and viewable and be part of the streetscape when it's in use. So that's why we've designed it to be operable. The screens that are fixed on sort of the right-hand side of this image, those more relate to kind of the storage area that would be part of that. So it didn't make sense to actually have those be operable. So that's why those are fixed. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and on the material, so it says wood look on the drawings, and I heard it was wood. Which one is it?
It's Trespa panels. So they're a high-pressure laminate. We needed something that would allow us to have that look of wood, but still be robust enough to handle any sort of graffiti and be able to be washed off in that sense. Something
Yeah.
that is robust and will kind of stand the test of time, essentially.
So what is it again?
Trespa,
Trespa.
it's a high-pressure laminate product. It has a wood look. The Knoxville, I think it's the KOC project in Dallas Springs. Most of that is a Trespa product.
Trespa. Well, yeah, my question about that was really because of the fact that it's north-facing, and if it was actually wood, there's the concern of the longevity of it. So,
The interior design also incorporates a lot of plywood,
Yeah.
finished wood look. I think we're going to try to use maple on the interior. So we wanted the exterior to relate, but using a wood on the exterior, especially in this condition, we were concerned about graffiti, and so that this product allows it has no sort of porosity to it, so if someone does come and tag it, it can be washed off pretty
does it
easily.
have graining though? Like it has grain embedded in it?
Yeah.
Was there a study of it not having the grain, but just having the similar look to the maple, and rather than it having the grain texture, the faux texture?
That is how the product is manufactured. I'm not sure.
We've had a lot of discussion on other projects of allowing faux wood in Knoxville, and it looks monolithic enough. It just would set a precedent for allowing faux wood. So I was just trying to consider that.
Is it consistent all the way through where it's routed? Does it have like a finished edge?
Where the reveals that you're seeing are black, and that matches the interior detail as well. We wanted to we're painting the edges of the plywood black, so the edges will be black on the exterior too.
But the part where you see in the night vision where the light is coming through, there's all those, like the little screen effect, that is all holes, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And
And so when it's routed, the product itself is black, so it'll again match the sort of edge condition.
okay, thank you.
The one kind of thought that I had, I live right up the street, so kind of from a pedestrian standpoint, what pedestrian traffic is this going to generate on that? I don't even know what that small street is there adjacent to where this is. Yeah. What is there gonna? I guess are there gonna be instances where pedestrians are flowing into the street, or how is that traffic managed as people arrive for events, that sort of thing?
Well, there will be pedestrians on that street similar to how they are now. We're not proposing pouring a new sidewalk or anything. That's sort of outside the project's purview. But that street does handle some pedestrian traffic currently. It's sort of an easement condition street. It's not, I'm not sure I'd call it particularly a city street, but it's sort of it's an odd condition street. How's that? I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe that thing because it's going underneath the Gay Street Bridge. It's entering in a parking lot. It is a bit of a strange condition, but it's kind of, everything from the streetscape out is kind of outside the project's purview, so.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll say, okay, this is a unique location and a unique solution for a unique purpose. And I think it's an excellent work. I want to make sure we don't understand this as precedent for other streetscapes that would typically require transparency. And this is not providing that transparency, but since it is a temporary use and it's also in this particular place, I think it's appropriate. So I would move to approve per staff recommendations, or just move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have 520 West Summit Hill Drive, case number 11C24DT.
Okay, this is a new illuminated channel letter sign. It measures approximately 6 feet 8 inches tall at the tallest point by 22 feet 1 inch wide. It'll be located on the building's east elevation, immediately below the roof line on the multi-story building. They are internally illuminated letters, similar to the ones that are currently there. We can see the existing in the photo on the left. And it will be located to the left of this building recess. So illuminated signs require review by the Design Review Board. The wall sign form meets the guidelines for the Boulevard District. The proposed sign is proportionate to the wall on which it will be installed, and the internal illumination is limited to those letters. So staff's recommending approval of 11C24DT as submitted.
Thank you, Lindsay. Does the board have, I'm sorry, is the applicant present?
My name is Morgan Andreyko with Pattison ID at the 520 West Summit Hill Drive.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
Since the original submittal, the only adjustment that we did want to make is where the paneling is now, when the penetrations from the old signs come down, we are concerned about consistency of patch and paint because of the oxidation of the panels that the building was made with. So we have decided to suggest a ACM cap over of a, I do have a copy of the drawing here, and I can send out additionals after if needed, but it's a 4 millimeter aluminum that would match the building as close as possible from that edge to edge. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that since it's not in this drawing here.
Okay, so you're just saying just for the width of the sign itself?
Yeah.
To make sure that you can't see remnants of the old sign?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the board have any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're moving to infill housing. The first case there is 1336 Delaware Avenue, case 8E24IH.
So this is a case that was postponed at the August 2024 meeting. So I will run through the building in general, but highlighting the revisions that have been made. So just as a refresher, this is a townhouse building, a 4-unit townhouse fronting Bragg Street here. The building will be 10 feet from the front property line there and 15 feet from the Delaware Avenue elevation. And the parking is proposed to be accessed from the alley located to the right side of the building. The building is 2 stories tall. It has a side gable roof line with a pitch not specified. The roof will be clad in asphalt shingles. The exterior is clad in a vinyl lap siding, and it will rest on a concrete slab foundation. The facade has been revised to feature four asymmetrical front gable entry stoops, and the windows have also been revised in placement and overall design. The left side elevation, this is the elevation fronting Delaware Avenue, now features 2 entry stoops and 2 secondary entries, along with bays of windows on both elevations. So just to run through some of the findings and speak to the revisions since the previous, and we can also see the rear elevation and the right side elevation. That's that interior side, and a revised rendering. So again, as a refresher, the applicant is using the middle housing standards here. The proposed front setback is appropriate for the context because that block on Bragg primarily features the side elevations of houses pushed closer, and it does meet the middle housing requirements. At 15 feet, this elevation is slightly closer to Delaware than the other houses on the block, but it will meet the required corner side setback. Site plan revisions may be necessary to meet city engineering and middle housing standards related to the parking, just related to the angle of the alley and setbacks. However, off-street parking is not required by the standards on this parcel, as the site is under a quarter of a mile from a traffic route, so the parking may be omitted altogether. The guidelines for multi-unit housing touch on that new multifamily buildings be designed in scale and context with architectural features of the neighborhood. The property has frontage on 2 streets. It's a corner lot. The surrounding blocks have 1 and 1.5 story Queen Anne cottages, craftsman's, and infill construction. So the revised drawings kind of try to relate to the context via these projecting front porches and the new gable massings there. The guidelines also recommend bays or breaks in the front facade that continue the rhythm of the block, and they recommend that individual units be divided into separate sections that are proportionately similar to original houses on the block, so the design remains rectangular in form. The revised drawings attempt to provide bays in the facade via these projecting massings here, and then also the porches. The Bragg Street elevation incorporates entry stoops supported by square posts on piers with asymmetrical pitched roofs. The stoops are appropriate in scale for the individual units. The Delaware Street elevation has been revised to have 2 stoops here and 2 secondary elevations. In the opinion of staff, this elevation should be revised to feature 1 partial or full-length porch with a roof pitch compatible with the neighborhood context instead of 2 stoops, because this is 1 unit here. The elevation, as I said, it's been revised to feature 2 secondary entries, so there's 2 doors here going to the same unit. And in the opinion of staff, again, that and they have 2 bays of windows, so those could be omitted. The application has been revised to incorporate typical double-hung windows instead of the square slider windows that were proposed. The windows have a far more kind of balanced arrangement than initially proposed, so the placement and proportion of the windows is sufficient for the context. The doors should be revised to be more similar to the historic context with specs provided to staff for approval. And again, there are 2 secondary doors on this Delaware elevation, which creates the impression of an extra unit facing the street, so 1 secondary entry should be omitted. At least a 6/12 roof pitch is required in the middle housing standards, and it's also typically the minimum approved by infill housing guidelines. So the applicant should confirm this roof pitch. It should be at least 6/12, and the board should discuss these 3 projecting gable roof massings on the facade. So the Design Review Board should discuss any additional design tactics necessary to differentiate the units, pending additional conditions identified by the board. Conditions of approval should include the final site plan meet middle housing standards and city engineering standards, revisions to the Delaware Street elevation to omit the secondary entry and revise the porch, with approval by staff and the roof pitch to be a minimum of 6/12 pitch.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, this is Sean. Sorry, I'm online. Address is 2426 Highland Drive in Knoxville.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
Right, yeah, I'm just gonna speak to number 2 and number 3. Over there, I can confirm that the pitch is 26.5 degrees, which is 612. And then the thing that's the minimum requirement, so that is confirmed. And then the second one is the second entry on Delaware. That front side, yeah, the first one will be taken away to replicate what we have on the other side. So it will be 2 windows at the top, 2 windows below, and then we have that single entry on that side, which is going to be the one at the back.
Thank you for clarifying that. Does the board have any comments?
I just have a couple. One, we had talked about going down to one door on Delaware. How would you handle the porch in that case? Would it be a porch all the way across, or will you just eliminate one of the 2 stoops that's shown on the current drawing?
A good question. Yeah, we're going to eliminate the first one, which is on my right now, the one towards the front. That one is going to be eliminated where we have door right now. Second door is going to be a window. It's going to be symmetric to what we have on the other side. And then we're going to be left with this other stoop at the back. I mean, we can extend it a little bit so that it looks like what the other building right around us have. But it's going to come out that way, and then we're going to have that window and the door still staying, the one at the back.
Okay, thank you. So a single stoop, but wider than this, more like the rest of the block. Okay.
Correct.
My other question was about the parking. It seems to use the alley as part of the parking lot, and that's actually a through alley that continues, but Lindsay had mentioned among the requirements, duking it out with the engineering department and getting it comply. So I think that'll be handled in that process.
That's a good point, yes.
Do the blank facades that you've added, the projecting facades, do those on the front elevation, do those come to the ground, or do those have like an actual underside to them that they're hovering over the ground plane?
You see that in the rendering?
Oh, say that again. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Oh, okay.
It looks like in the transverse section that they're just punches that are extruded out.
Pretty much we got like a 2 feet projection over there, just separating all 4.
And can you describe what was the design intent of the offset gable at the entries, the entry stoops?
Yeah, it's pretty much, I mean, the idea is something to really break each of these individual units. So that looking at them from, this is Bragg's now, looking at them from Bragg's, you can kind of identify that there are 4 units over there, and we have something at the top, which is the projection we're looking at, and then at the lower part is the stoops to really be able to identify individual units.
Yeah, to me it seems like there's something competing about the pure gables above and then the offset below. It looks like a bit of a, and to be frank, it looks like a bit of a mess that there's pure gables above and then the offset below that. It looks like it's competing for a design of one or the other because it doesn't track to the upper roof forms at all. It's just a bunch of just separate moves.
Could you help clarify on that? I think I'm...
The fact that the offset, the entry stoops being offset and all of the gables above being symmetrical, I think those are competing in the design, and the fact that you have the symmetrical gables above and then the offset below, there's no consistency in the design. It's like it should be one or the other.
Yeah, it's fine. We can definitely line them up to make them symmetrical. So in that case, we're gonna have 4 at the top, or we have 3. We can have 3 at the top. Can have 4 at the top to make them line up if that's preferable.
I think the concern is that the ones on the bottom are offset, so they're not symmetrical themselves. And so if those could align up in the middle, then it would be more consistent with the gables above, not necessarily asking to add more gables at the top.
Just make them symmetrical?
Yes.
Oh, that's easy add, we can definitely do that.
Any other comments?
I had a comment on this overall scale of the building. It seems to be that it's a little bit out of line with the scale. Obviously, most of these houses are single story, so it's not apples to apples comparison, but I noticed that the upper floor has a 9-foot ceiling. Is there a possibility of lowering that to 8 feet to at least to bring down the roof line a bit? Maybe even consider lowering the roof line even more than that and allowing the walls inside to kind of become more attic-like. Have you considered anything like that?
So as it stands, the whole building is 26, and my understanding is we're still within the limits with 26. So are you requesting we bring that down? If we reduce that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even though it's in the limits right now, it seems that the roof pitch is lower than the 612, and so I worry that once you actually show that at 612, whether it would, be even more out of scale than it already is.
And then the ask is maybe reduce the first floor over there just to make sure that we're still within 26 limits in that case.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
And I said the ask is that once we get that roof pitch to 26.5 degree, which is 612, that maybe reducing that first level a little bit just to keep us within that 26 feet. I think that's because currently it sits at 9, so it's saying maybe reduce it to 8.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, that's fine, easy, yeah.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm uncomfortable making that as a requirement.
Sure.
Because a 9-foot ceiling internally, I don't think you're gonna tell a 1-foot difference on the exterior once you're on the street. But a 9-foot ceiling internally does make a big difference between an 8-foot and a 9-foot. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't require it as part of it. I was just wondering if it had been considered.
Oh, okay.
I think the overall objective there, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, is just that we'd like to see that the overall massing of the building appears a little bit smaller to match the scale of the rest of the buildings on the street.
Yeah, when you were working through this, and these are townhomes, so there's 4 units, you're trying to make them look like 4 units, and when you scabbed on the projections on the upper floor, it didn't really break them down much more. It just kind of put just some additive gables on the upper floor. Was there any design iteration of, I'm sorry, my mic keeps buzzing, of trying to separate those more with the articulation of the facade to where they actually just read as 4 units that happen to be connected, like a townhouse unit we generally see. I guess I keep coming back, it's like there's a lot of competing things. There's not a consistent thread of design idea in it, and it looks like it's still not resolved. So it's like I can't approve it yet in my head because it doesn't look like the thought's finished.
So the ask on the middle housing is we either use like a break in the whole mass, or we use these projections which we have on the first floor. And I think we're going with that idea to say, okay, we can have a blend of both. So on the first floor over there, we've decided to have this individual breakage in the unit, and we're reading through that. It says, okay, if you have that breakage, I think 2 feet deep minimum kind of thing, just to make sure you show that anybody looking at it really knows that, okay, these things are broken down into 3 or 4, in this case, 4. And then on the lower part, again, we can make that symmetric ask that was mentioned initially, but putting those stoops over there kind of break them down. So I'm just trying to clarify in my head now, is there, because that's what is written over there, is there something in particular that we want to see to make that individual breakage easily visible? Because I think we're trying to make use of those two things that were required in the infill housing document.
I know one thing that's used often on larger masses in multi-unit things is changes in material or color. You know, perhaps but the center section could be a different color between the two narrow projections. So it looks more like a larger house in the middle and a small one on either end. That starts to give you a rhythm more like detached housing would. It's just a possible way to achieve what we're looking for without major redesigns. And
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone said it, it looks much better than last time.
Is there one other question? The fascias look like they're a foot tall on everything. Is that representative of what the scale of the fascia on all of the overhangs is going to be? That's part of the out of scale understanding. Is that like the fascias are really, really thick?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can definitely reduce the scale of the fascia to make sure it's not as thick as we're looking at right now. But I also want to touch on the brilliant point on the color. That sounds like I don't think we have color in the document, but that sounds like a brilliant idea that we can also use in this case to help in the breakage if we think the recess is not showing what we really need to see enough. We can definitely like mismatch the colors, just make it more beautiful, and then show that these are 4 different things.
Just one more thing to Tony's point about the massing. So we decided that this is representing 612 or not for the roof pitch. It's like a 412, right? So when we see this built, it's going to have that much taller of a scale to it, with the gable going the other direction from the front elevation. Yeah, it's better, to Perry's point, but I still don't think it's resolved yet. But sitting here nitpicking it isn't going to give you the direction you need. But my biggest overall thought is that it's just not holistic in its design. It's kind of got a few disparate design moves that need to be more consistent, and that would make the project stronger.
I had one more comment that could give a little bit more direction as well. I noticed that the bays that you've added, which I like that you've added some gables to the front, but they don't seem to relate to anything. It looks like you've added a projection on the front that doesn't have a window or any sort of articulation other than the fact that makes the closet a bit larger upstairs. And it's not really resting, it's just projecting on the upper floor. I think, obviously, we can't really design it for you, but it seems like if you were to relate those bays more to entrances or windows, I think that could go a long way.
So on the final thoughts over there, I think I'm going to need some clarity on that last one. And I just want to make sure I'm walking away from here knowing exactly what is required over here. But I looked at the more we talk about it, the more I get confused about the whole thing. Could you help me clarify the last thing you said over there, please?
Yeah, sure. The bays where you've added the gables on the front, the front there where she's pointing, they project, and typically when you have projecting bays, they end up adding more livable space with glazing and things that add kind of a prominent feature on the front. But this in this case, they're not really adding much architecturally, other than the fact that they break up the upper floor some. So I would recommend potentially looking at adding windows or relating those bays more to the interior space.
So the bays are actually incorporated into the interior space. They are in the interior, they are actually closets. They're part of the closets in the bedrooms, because the bedrooms are upstairs. So where we have the bays now, they are the walk-in closets in the interior. I mean, if we want windows to go on the upper part, it's going to look weird if we do that. But that's just, I think the point I'm trying to make is it is part of the livable space inside the house for all 4 units on the upper floor.
I see that. I see that. I think my bigger issue is that it doesn't seem to relate with the ground floor at all, and it's not really resting on anything visually. The porches don't even align with the projection, so I think taking a closer look at how that relates with the floor below could help.
Yeah, I mean, to Tony's point, like if those projections were all justified to the left of each unit and came to the ground and had a window to the bedroom and the living room below, it would seem like a unified step. Like you would have projection windows for above and below for bedroom and living room. You'd have the entry, lower stoop below that, and then just continue that across the entirety of the unit. And there's the consistency and the resolution of that projection possibly coming down to the base.
It would help with scale too, to get
Yes.
everything aligned. And then you would have a tall element and then 2 stacked windows, a tall element, 2 stacked windows across the whole facade.
Yep.
Yeah, and then having a window or something in those to add some texture and detail to give them reason would be good. As it looks like there's enough here that needs to be worked on a little bit. It is a whole lot better than what you first brought to us, so I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate how you're addressing both streetscapes. But it sounds like what you're calling the left elevation still needs to be worked on a good bit and represented to us, because just from what we've described, how you've described you're going to change it sounds like it's the generally right direction, but we need to actually see that. So I'd like to make a motion to postpone.
Second.
Again.
We have a motion to postpone and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And Lindsay, do you have enough information to give him some guidance from all our random comments?
Yes, I absolutely do, and we always, we go back and rewatch the recordings and can provide something. So, Mr. Olu, we can touch base, and I'll write something up for you to have some summaries of all the board's comments as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Lindsay, because I'm super confused at this point. Yeah. But I'll touch base with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The motion carries. Thanks. Okay, next
Did we
up.
have a vote?
Did you say all in favor?
Yeah, all in favor? Did we do that? Sorry. Thought so. Okay, just making sure. Next up, we have 1212 Catherine Avenue, which is,
First we have this.
no, we don't. We have 1102 Raleigh Avenue, which is 11A 24IH.
This is a new primary structure fronting Raleigh Avenue. The building is proposed to be set 25 feet from the front lot line, and the building measures 23 feet wide by 73 feet deep. It features a 29 feet deep attached garage projecting from the rear. And so it's a 2-story residence with a side gable roof clad in asphalt shingles, 2 front gable roof massings, and a 5-foot deep full-length front porch with a partial shed roof that's supported by square columns. So some of the findings here, the house is proposed to be set 25 feet from the front property line. It will be consistent with the block face. The block that will receive new construction is characterized by craftsman houses and Queen Anne cottages. This house is 23 feet wide by 73 feet deep. It's not proportionate to the other houses on the block that range between approximately 30 to 41 feet wide and 40 to 62 feet deep. The side and rear setback requirements would allow for a house with a wider facade and a more shallow depth that's comparable to the neighborhood context. The attached garage could also be omitted or made detached to allow for a less long house. The facade is more narrow than other houses on the street by at least 7 to 10 feet. The plans indicate a concrete slab. The applicant did submit a revision showing that it is above a crawl space. Guidelines recommend a front elevation that's similar in scale with the context, with a facade about the same width as original houses on the block. The house will be slightly taller than the context as well. Guidelines also recommend porches that are 8 to 12 feet deep. This porch is 5 feet. And then guidelines recommend that windows and doors be similar to historic houses on the block with similar placement. The house features windows that are generally somewhat irregularly placed, and the attached garage creates a large swath of siding with no transparency on both sides. So staff's recommending postponement of 11A 24IH to allow the applicant to select another plan which more clearly meets the design guidelines, in particular building width and depth, garage, porch, and window placement and proportion.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am. Is my mic working?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Dawn Erie, and I'm with Bait Development. I am the partner with MES Development on this project. And I just had a couple questions seeking guidance on this. The neighboring house is 5 feet from the lot line. So if we were to widen the home to the minimum 5 feet, the two homes would be 10 feet apart. And that, to me, I'm not real excited about doing that way. So I did want to try to keep it 10 feet off the lot line on the one side. And then the other side has a 12-foot setback because it's a corner lot. So that limits to some degree how wide we could go. And so I was wondering if it would be possible to modify the existing plan by 5 feet, adding 5 feet to the width. And that would give us a 28-foot width, if that would be sufficient, as well as increasing the depth of the front porch. So I'm asking if modifying the existing plan would satisfy the issues, or do we truly need to get a whole new plan?
I think that is a possibility, but I think my concern would be that this is a really tidy plan and set of elevations right now. And so adding that 5 feet, I think would have to be pretty symmetrical and could affect the overall alignments of everything. So we'd want to make sure that it maintained that neat appearance on the front. And then the windows on the sides that are irregular right now would need to be shifted to align a little bit better and look a little bit more tidy.
Okay. Okay. Also, my other question was, is retaining a rear garage that is attached to the structure, is that an issue, or should I be looking for a plan with a detached garage on the rear? Or what is your
I think the
point?
attached garage certainly isn't helping it. When I first saw the elevation, I thought it at least needs a break in it, because that long expanse of the facade is way too long. So yeah, a detached garage maybe back towards the alley, and then a sidewalk leading to the home is pretty traditional, and it would break down that scale.
Okay.
A question I had to add to that: you're showing masonry as the siding material. Is that the intention? Actual brick?
No.
Damn.
What did you want, brick?
It doesn't matter what I want. I just wanted to know if you guys were proposing that. Yeah.
Well,
typically it's a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There is a variety of siding in the neighborhood. There's stucco, there's brick, there's lap. There's new construction around the corner, which is Dutch Lap, or I'm not, sorry, Dutch Lap, Board and Bat. So there's a little bit of everything going on in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see actual brick masonry, and the unfortunate part is when you get the lap siding, it's out of vinyl, not actual wood. So that's, or the board and batten's vinyl, not wood. So that's why when I saw the brick, I was excited to see that. So if your budget works and that can happen, that'd be great. But I don't believe that's a requirement of the guidelines.
Yeah. We are
I would
renovating
just
the
say
house
as a
next door.
requirement of the application process, the drawings need to show what you are actually going to
Yeah.
build.
Yeah, I wasn't saying don't show what you're going to build, but yeah, Lindsay's right. You'll need to show what you're actually going to propose for the facade material.
Okay. Well, so when I go looking for a new plan, because of the constraints on the lot, I'm wondering if 28 feet width would be acceptable. I really don't want to place that new house so close to the one that we're rehabbing right now, which you see in the picture.
It really depends on what the plan is and how it's arranged. It needs to meet the infill housing guidelines and the setbacks that are, unless you seek a variance, it needs to meet the setbacks that are required.
Well, 28 feet would certainly meet all the setbacks, but the comments were asking me to increase the width by around 10 feet, and I'm asking if 5 feet would be sufficient.
I would say, just from the staff perspective and revising the staff comments, that's not a determination that I would make without seeing the actual plan of the house. Because but the guidelines typically do recommend having a facade with the same width as original houses on the block. So anything you can do to be close to those measurements would be preferable.
Okay, well, I don't know if there's any houses in the neighborhood that are 10 feet apart from each other physically. You know, even though the RN2 allows a 5-foot setback on each side.
It's not a problem for the board that the houses are 10 feet apart. That sounds like a personal preference, but our preference, according to the guidelines, is that the new house match, at least generally, in width with the other houses on the street. That's our priority.
Okay. Is there a mechanism by which I could submit some options?
I'm happy to review options for you if you can email them to me in a timely fashion before the deadline.
Okay.
But the board will not.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to postpone per staff recommendation.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second.
We have a motion to postpone and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to do 1212 Catherine Avenue, which is case 11B24IH.
Okay, so this is just a revision to a previous approval. The COA was issued in May 2022, and the board approved the design and the placement, but there have been some revisions to the materials, the overall building footprint, and then the driveway placement that are driving this, and so it did kind of exceed what could be approved administratively. Overall, the facade arrangement and the side elevations and the rear elevation in general were approved by the board. The house will be set 15 feet from the front property line. It's been revised in shape, so it's measuring 33 feet 9 inches wide by 42 feet deep, and the parking is proposed to be accessed from the alley. The general findings here, interesting. Hold on one second. Apologies. So the front setback is The house is proposed to be set 15 feet from the front property line. The average setback of the block face is 9.5 feet, so the site plan should be revised to include a front setback of 10 feet, which is the minimum for the block to create that consistent street. Overall, the block doesn't have a lot of context. There was a shotgun house on the block previously. There's new construction, similar to a shotgun house adjacent. There are Queen Anne's and Craftsman bungalows around it. The house is somewhat wider than other houses on the block, but generally compatible with the context. The main design element here that I would note is that the design includes a 5-foot deep porch, and guidelines typically recommend a porch 8 to 12 feet deep. So the staff recommendation is to approve 11B 24 IH, subject to the conditions that the site plan meets city engineering standards, a revision to the proposed front setback with site plan approval by staff, modifications to the porch to meet the design guidelines, and then using the lap siding with an overlap instead of Dutch lap or flush panel.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Eric Forstall with Ball Design Services. We just made some changes to the size of the lot, which made us change the size of the house. And I have no objections to all this. Lindsay's recommendations are perfect for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, does the board have questions or comments?
What do we approve for the base of it, the block? Are you leaving the block, are you parge coating the block?
I think back then, that was like a year ago. I think we actually agreed at that point it was going to be like some type of a stucco or a paint. I don't
Yep.
remember.
Not paint, stucco. It'd be better, it needs to be stucco or brick veneer.
I think it was a stucco or parch coated.
Yeah.
On the.
It's a
on the
year
concrete
ago. I'll be
block.
lucky if I remember last month.
Well, we're gonna clarify it now, so it needs to be stucco or parge coated.
Pretty much, we're gonna pretty much follow everything that was agreed to last time. We just had to thin the lot out. Our original approval included 20 feet of the neighbor's property, but she was never able to get that done with her mortgage company. So we had to go back to our original size of the lot with the paper all enclosure. We were already approved, we already had a building permit pretty much submitted. And she was never able to get it done. It's been over a year, so the owner decided not to proceed and just go back to the original design. So, nothing drastic.
Any other comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have 522 West Glenwood Avenue, case number 11C24IH.
Okay, so this is a new subdivision plat, combining one approximately 107 feet wide by 150 foot deep lot fronting Glenwood Avenue. So you can see this is the front of that lot line. With a lot measuring 83 feet wide by 88 feet deep fronting Woodland Avenue. So it's creating this sort of L-shaped lot. They are contiguous right here, and there is a corner lot here that's being excluded. So design review, the infill housing zoning standards require approval for subdivisions within the infill housing overlay. These are typically approved administratively when it meets the design guidelines. So typically the subdivision plats that are just removing a lot line or keeping that 50-foot wide lot, those are approved administratively. So you guys don't typically see these. So the proposed subdivision plat doesn't clearly meet the design guidelines, so it can't be approved administratively. The one design guideline is basically just stating on lots greater than 50 feet in width, consider recreating the original lot size. And it speaks to that in the intro section of those design guidelines, talking about typical lot width. This subdivision plat does not create that typical lot size. It combines two that both have street frontage. The lot fronting Woodland Avenue right now has multiple secondary structures, and then the primary structure is on the one fronting Glenwood. Combining a lot that could provide infill housing with an existing lot isn't typically supported by the design guidelines, but we can also note it is reversible. So this lot does meet the minimum lot area of the base zoning. So if subsequent property owners did want to re-subdivide it to provide infill housing, that would meet the minimum lot area for the base zoning district. So staff's recommending approval of 11C 24IH as submitted.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Okay. Do we know why they want to do this?
If they're not able to speak, my hypothesis is, from looking at aerials, there are multiple secondary structures on a lot. Typically, you can't have secondary structures on a lot that don't have a primary structure, so there's a garage, a chicken coop, and a shed. And I think the intent would be to make their secondary structures legal.
Do we have any comments from the board?
Is there a structure on the corner lot?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just opinion, since that's why we're here, it's kind of a mess with that streetscape. They could have 3 houses facing the street instead of 1, and then a bunch of yard. And but if someone owns it, I think, and they have the right to break the lot line, I guess they could do that. But it seems like there's a lot of weird lots left, and that's what we're getting into, are the weird lots, I think, with infill housing, and this one is one of them, and it just seems heavy-handed. But I remember we approved the house, which is really far set off the street and everything, so.
This basically represents the existing use. I don't know that the house is modern. This is a situation that's evolved over time, and they've bought an added property and used it as their little urban farm. And this is basically, I think, what, like Lindsay's saying, is combining it to make it a legal situation instead of a collection of pieces.
One other comment, just quick.
I finally got my microphone on. I'm sorry. This is Andrew Mulla. I own 522 West Glenwood. So the reason why this evolved is I also owned 528 West Glenwood at one point, and we had broke off that portion of land that faces woodland. At the time, I think it was about 5 years ago, we had intended to maybe build a house there, and our family continued to grow, and then we put chickens there, and there's a little greenhouse space down there, and somebody from the city had notified us that they weren't going to make a big deal of it because we maintain that property and there's gardens there, but it technically wasn't legal. So we hired a surveyor to just make it legal, is why we're doing this.
Thank you.
Sorry to butt in, and
Nope, that's good. That's what we wanted. Thank you. Does the board have any other comments?
I move to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have 2501 Edgewood Avenue, which is case number 11D24IH.
Okay, so this is a new 2-story multifamily building that's fronting Whittle Springs Road. So you can see the orientation on the site plan here. The building contains 2 rectangular massings that are connected at the center via a 1-story corridor massing. Each of these massings measure approximately 88 feet wide along Whittle Springs Road, and then it's 52 feet, 4 inches deep overall. The building is proposed to be set 15 feet from the front property line, and the building has 2 massings with 9/12 pitch roofs clad in asphalt shingles, an exterior of horizontal engineered wood lap siding, brick veneer accents, and a brick clad foundation. So you can see the 2 here, and I'll pull up the applicant's full packet, but that's also in the case file that shows kind of the massing study. In terms of the findings, so this property is zoned CN, which is neighborhood commercial. It's currently a surface parking lot. There was an abandoned car wash demolished in approximately 2019. The context is at the intersection of Whittle Springs and Edgewood, so there's a non-historic gas station right here. There's a commercial building, and then there are some one-story commercial buildings fronting Whittle Springs, and then moving further east and west, there's residential development. In terms of front setback, that proposed 15 front setback does meet the base zoning code. It will orient this building towards the busier street, a minor arterial instead of the more residential Edgewood Avenue. There were 2-story townhouses recently approved fronting Whittle Springs Road at the intersection with Washington Pike, which is just south of here. So placement of the building is appropriate for the context. The site plan does include a walkway from the street. The parking meets the infill guidelines in that it is located behind the primary building. It's accessed via a secondary street. Due to the zoning and the development, there is a landscaping buffer that's required, and there is additional landscaping depicted on the site plan. The surface parking area will be larger in size. However, the site currently does feature a large amount of surface parking, and that will be reduced for the building and all the landscaping. The final site plan should meet city engineering standards. The property is this corner lot with commercial zoning. It's more oriented towards that commercial development. The broader residential context has minimal traditionals, craftsman houses. There are non-historic multifamily buildings immediately like northwest fronting Whittle Springs, and then there's infill construction. So the building is aligned with the neighborhood context via gable roofs, symmetrically arranged double hung windows. There's brick cladding and a brick foundation and lap siding, and the application packet includes sort of the relevant buildings that they've looked at there. While the multifamily building at 2 stories, that does typically necessitate that additional story beyond the 1-story single-family houses in the context. The building isn't overly tall. The drawings indicate a 2-foot tall foundation. That may present slightly taller in the renderings here. So making sure that foundation height is 2 feet or under, that may assist in reducing the overall scale of the building. The guidelines recommend using the porches, bays, and breaks we've discussed and creating sort of separated massings. The existing block doesn't really have a continuous architectural rhythm. The building is broken up into 2 massings in width via this connector, and then in depth via an additional connector. On both of those elevations. The guidelines do emphasize stoops and porches for multifamily buildings, so this design does incorporate 1 recessed entry stoop. And the board could discuss the guidelines for porches in relation to this specific design. The building has 9/12 pitch roofs on both massings and then a lower flat roof connector. The roof line design has sufficient complexity and pitches comparable to historic houses in the neighborhood. The materials are appropriate within the design guidelines, and the elevations feature sufficient transparency for the context. The arrangement is symmetrical and an organized sort of arrangement of window placement. So staff's recommending approval of 10 or 11D24IH, subject to the conditions that the site plan meets city engineering standards and landscaping requirements. The foundation measure 2 feet in height or lower to reduce the overall scale of the building, and then the final elevation drawings meet design standards of the CN zoning and principal use.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Hello, I'm Taylor Heim Eisenhower with Two Oaks Architecture. I'm representing Southeast Capital. I'm joined by David Varner with Southeast Capital and Dylan Jackson, our civil engineer.
Great, thank you. Can you give us your address, please?
Yes, 1809 North Hills Boulevard.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
Just that the rendering is less or more out of date than the elevations after our back and forth with staff and zoning.
Okay. Does the board have comments?
And Taylor, are you speaking to that elevation there in the rendering versus with the base of wall?
Yes,
Yeah.
so meeting the transparency calculations, we needed to lower the foundation wall and add a window at the corner.
Got it. So in the discussion of stoops and those sort of things, so you have just the one, so that means tenants will, the way this is designed is to not have each unit have an exterior access.
Correct. It'll be 15 units of studios,
Studios.
affordable housing with an internal corridor. And then an entrance, this entrance will be off parking where this will be the ADA entrance.
Got it.
Could you bring the site plan back? I'm wondering if there is any outdoor access for the tenants at all? If there are no porches or balconies, is there enough yard for walk your dog or throw out a chair and sit?
Yeah, so we have a 20-foot landscape buffer on the side and rear setbacks, which we've not yet programmed, but I'm imagining some sort of pathways and benches for resident use. As far as the front setback, we're really hoping to engage with Whittle Springs, so keeping that more as pedestrian access. And then those two kind of triangles off of Edgewood have a lot of potential as well. We're hoping to engage a landscape architect to help us meet the infill landscape guidelines.
I think it's a very elegant building. I think my main concern is activating the street with more entrances and to Perry's point about outdoor space, I think potentially adding stoops where someone could sit a chair and sit out there on the porch or on the stoop, or adding porches to the units that face the street could go a long way.
So, I was going to add to that. I'm afraid, though, that you doing that, which I'm sure you've already studied that iteration, that's a different project. To have the exterior access on all sides like that, that's a completely different building.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if the entry that you intend to have as an entry could be more activated and maybe even enlarged just a little bit to be sort of more of a community space so that it doesn't change the whole idea of the building and just helps to activate and elevate what you already have.
Yeah, you mean the one facing Whittle Springs?
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty constrained on the back bar, but the Whittle Springs bar, we could definitely widen that porch.
Yeah, right now, like Tony said, I think it's very elegant and nicely put together and a great scale. I think the entry does have a little bit of an in-between quality where it's a nice generous size for if it's just an entry, but a little bit too small to really enjoy space out there. So I think studying that particular bar would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, even just bringing the steps out closer to the street so that the kind of level part, the porch becomes more interacted to the street would help with that.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, a porch is a permitted encroachment? Okay.
Nice. Maybe as you're studying it too, like if depending on how far you want to extend it, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the building, the gasket doesn't get wider, but maybe there's an extension. If the stairs came more forward, like Josh mentioned, that there's an extension of a patio to the short side, just for more outdoor space. So it's like the landing actually kind of envelops a little bit of the right massing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that would still keep the kind of, I guess, the spirit of the building a little bit more, but maybe that's too much. It's just another thought of maybe giving more community space that's outside.
Our hesitancy there is just inviting people to hang out in front of someone's unit.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, gotcha. Like you're sitting outside somebody's living room.
right. We're losing one unit to be like an office administrative, so if we looked at that, we could consider the location of that unit.
Yeah.
It looks like we've kind of moved toward a couple of minor changes that could help address that. One would be to move the smaller massing up till it touches your setback in the point, to widen that entry and public outdoor space, and move the stair forward to where your flat area comes to the front wall of the building, more or less. And then we've developed a pretty good outdoor patio space that could be communal, and really not just changing any other aspects of the building. So, I mean, I would consider making a motion with those two suggestions that we approve based on the other recommendations.
I have one other question. I had one other question that isn't going to negate the approval. I just wanted to ask on the siding. What is it again? It's engineered wood?
Yes, they're hoping to use the LP Smart siding.
Okay. Is it going to be on a rain screen or anything like that? A ventilated cavity behind it, or is it just stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because it's a dark material, and I don't know I didn't look at the north arrow, but just the longevity of it for maintenance. Just thinking about it buckling being such a dark material, if it is on that ventilated cavity, it'll help it just last longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perry, can you please clarify, was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make that a motion that we approve based on pushing the smaller mass toward the point to widen the entry public space and pull that stair forward. And then other staff recommendations.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have 3201 Johnston Street, which is case number 11E24IH.
Okay, so this is, again, a revision to 8C24IH. Nothing has changed here, so I can keep this one relatively condensed. But the footprint and the setbacks have been revised. So y'all may remember the building was really close to the property line, which was not prohibited in the CN zone. However, based on some building code, they have come back and revised these elevations. So the side setbacks have been revised in response to building code requirements. So the building footprint has changed, the facade width has changed. All of the comments otherwise remain, and the one I'd just note that is back is the guidelines do recommend windows and doors are comparable to historic houses on the block. Right now, there are no windows on the left elevation, and it will be somewhat visible from the street because now it will be set 5 feet from the property line. So staff's recommending approval of 11E24IH, subject to city engineering and plans review standards, and noting that windows to be added to the left elevation.
Thank you, Lindsay. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Lopez Pierre, 1326 West Baxter Avenue.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
No.
Okay. Do we have board discussion?
Is the lack of windows because of fire separation? It's not.
It was close to it was like right on the line last time.
That's why.
So it was like a fire thing.
Yeah.
And then we said just flip it to where I have windows near the street and then no windows right there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But we can add windows to that blank elevation and it not be a fire issue. Got it. Great.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have 712 Atlantic Avenue, which is case number 11F24IH.
Okay. It's a new primary structure. It's a single-family house fronting Atlantic Avenue. It is a two-story residence with a side gable roof, with a front gable roof massing projecting from the facade and rear elevation. The facade has a full-length 10-foot deep front porch. It's covered by a shed roof and supported by tapered columns. The house is 28 feet wide by 56 feet deep. It'll be set 20 feet from the front property line, and parking is located on a concrete pad accessed via the alley. The house is proposed to be set with the front porch at 20 feet from the front property line, which is then an additional 10 feet to the main massing of the house. The average setback of the block face is 32.1 feet. The adjacent houses are 32 and 30. So the staff recommendation would be that the house be recessed slightly towards the rear property line to align with the adjacent houses, can achieve a balance between that 10-foot porch and the main massing. The 3-bay facade is proportionate to the dimensions of the lot. The house has consistent side setbacks with the block. The parking meets the infill housing design guidelines. The house is slightly taller than the houses on the block, but it does reduce that 2-story via a smaller dormer on the front. The facade has a height similar to the block's context. The 10-foot deep, full-length front porch meets the design guidelines. It has porch supports that are consistent with the house's style. And then all elevations have sufficient transparency. There is a swath for this shed roof massing that doesn't have transparency. However, there is a window facing the street there to sort of contribute to that. So staff's recommending approval of 11F 24IH, subject to the conditions that the front setback align with the adjacent houses, the final site plan meet city engineering standards, and then the final site plan include those native or naturalized shade trees in the front and rear yards.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Hi, yes, I'm right here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Can you give us your name and address, please?
I am Tyler Prayer. I'm not the applicant. That's Joseph Mayer, so I'm not quite sure what his address is off the top of my head. He couldn't make it today, so that's why I'm filling in. But I'm actually the designer of the project, so I'm open to questions if you have that, because Lindsay did a great job at explaining everything, much better than I probably could have.
You still need the address.
Oh, sorry. My address is 8410 Central Lane.
Great, thank you. 8410, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments specifically?
Oh, no. I guess the only question that I had was I think one of the comments was to include trees in the front and rear yards, and I just didn't know if that was subject to any particular type, considering how large certain, breeds of trees can get.
So the design guidelines just recommend for lots that have 25 foot in depth to the front property line, a native or naturalized shade tree be included, and we don't really get into the species, so that's really your call.
I do believe the city's website has recommendations for acceptable trees.
Yeah.
So you can look at that database.
Okay. Other than that, we'll meet the other conditions just fine.
Great, thank you. Does the board have any more comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have 3215 Johnston Street, which is case number 11G24IH.
Okay, and so the next two cases, they're not adjacent. I will present them differently because there are some different recommendations, but they are identical in design, so I won't repeat the description or some of the materials-based findings, so I'll do that this first time around, but not on the next case. So this is 3215 Johnston Street. The applicant is proposing a new primary structure, which is a duplex fronting Johnston. It's a 2-story building. It's 32 feet 6 inches wide by 50 feet deep. It has a side gable roof with a 6/12 pitch, and then a lower front gable roof massing projecting, and then and then a shed roof massing projecting towards the rear. It has an asphalt shingle-clad roof, an exterior of horizontal vinyl lap siding, and a concrete block foundation. The duplex will be set 25 feet from the front property line. So in terms of the findings for this one, this is a middle housing project, so they are subject to section 4.6 of the zoning code. Overall, the front setback will maintain a consistent streetscape with the block. The block to receive new construction has craftsman houses, modified Queen cottages. This is actually 2 lots down from the Johnston Street house we just looked at. The duplex is proportional to the dimensions of lot. It has consistent side setbacks, as you can see here. The current site plan doesn't include parking, as it is, off-street parking isn't required for middle housing projects within a quarter mile of a transit route. Revisions would be necessary to the site plan that may require return to the DRB if the applicant intends to include parking. So there's not an operable alley, and the parking has to be at least 20 feet behind the facade line of the house. The guidelines recommend that multi-unit houses do be similar in height. The 2-story structure is obviously taller than the 1-story houses in the context, but it is somewhat reduced by the lower front gable roof massings, and it is relatively low in height for a 2-story house. The side elevations don't have as much architectural variation, so to avoid large swaths of siding without transparency, the applicant could consider an additional siding variation. They have 8-foot deep front porches, which meet the guidelines for size and placement. Just one element here is that infill housing reviews typically recommend at least 6x6 porch supports, and these are 4x4s. And then the guidelines recommend window and door styles be similar placement. The side elevations have a wide variety of window sizes and placement. The right side elevation doesn't have sufficient transparency, so the side elevation window sizes should be revised to be a little more consistent with the context, with an additional window on the right side elevation, 2nd story, so that's like here. Overall, the horizontal lap siding should have a horizontal overlap, similar to wood siding instead of the Dutch lap, and the concrete block foundation should be clad in stucco or parge coated. But staff recommends approval of 11G 24IH, subject to the conditions that the site plan meet engineering standards, the porch supports be revised in size or designed to better align with the context, revision to the side elevation window placement and sizing with the addition of one on the right side, 2nd story, and then the final site plan include the tree in both the front and rear yards.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, if you could speak up just a little bit and give us your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Tae Cho. My address is 1140 Belle Pond Avenue.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
Not really. I did email her an updated set of revisions that I think address most of the issues already. But yeah, I mean, everything works for me.
Thank you. Does the board have comments?
Actually, can I ask a quick question while I have you guys?
Yep.
Okay, so Lindsay, if you go to the original on the left side elevation versus the new one, I changed the window size a little bit to make them all exactly the same, but I wasn't really sure if that's what you were specifically stating as a requirement, or if there is some flexibility to the window size or not. Because what I found myself doing is trying to force, a window size that doesn't make sense for some of these spaces. For example, the one that I have circled right there on the first floor, that's actually a hall bathroom, and it doesn't really make sense to have a 3x5 window there, obviously. But I was trying to make it work per what I understood your requirements were.
I can just say the design guideline is typically that the styles are similar to historic houses on the block, similar placement and ratio of solid to void. So it doesn't specifically say that all the windows need to be an identical size, but in general, it is preferable to have the larger ones, but it's also, old houses too have some houses or some windows that are reduced in height in a bathroom or a kitchen. So I think there is generally some flexibility there for you. They don't all have to be identical, although this does have a lot more transparency.
Okay, understood. I may make a couple revisions and send it back to you, but That was really my only real question there.
My opinion, with the 5 large windows being the same, having a 6 at a different size with a different purpose, as long as the style is the same, I'm for that.
Okay, yeah, that would be my preference as well. I just want to clarify that that was acceptable.
It's just my opinion, so we need to discuss it.
Sure.
I think to Lindsay's point, it does make sense for the height to be reduced so that you have that upper portion of transparency, but you still have the privacy that's required in a bathroom if you wanted to omit the bottom half of that window and just leave the same rhythm of the top pieces. That might be one strategy to use.
Sure, okay.
I think a more significant aspect of window consistency with neighborhoods and things like that, especially, is trim. And on these drawings, I see no window trim at all. Just a vinyl J molding along the window edge is not sufficient to really distinguish your windows and doors and things. So I would want to get some reassurance that there will be at least 3.5-inch trim around the windows and doors to distinguish it from the siding.
It looks like he's doing it on the upper level windows, but not anywhere else on the front facade. It's got some trim around it. So that's what Perry's getting to.
Right. Yeah, we can add some 1x4, Craftsman trim around there, around all the windows.
I had one question, and it was about the porch. It kind of just looks like the porch is just a slab on grade, just on grade. There's no elevation to it until you get to the stairs. So, is there any elevation change between it and the grass or grade beside it?
As it currently is drawn, no, but that is, of course, easily adaptable if you guys prefer the elevation change to be on the front side of the porch, if that's what you're inferring there.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the back of house when you have just the steps coming out the door immediately with no landing. That might be something you get pinged on with code anyway because there's no landing. So, but honestly, my concern was when I was looking at the 4x4 post, that being directly on the ground, and of course we want it to be 6x6 or something like that, but just the draining and the longevity of that wood post with it being right on grade with all of that is problematic. It looked like an actual porch if it was elevated from the ground.
And are you guys okay with just typical decking material for that porch?
The design guidelines for infill housing don't speak to porch flooring materials, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a plans review thing, but I believe you're required to have a minimum landing that is equal to the width of the door on either side of any passageway. So it might achieve that better by elevating the whole porch, like Cameron is suggesting, and then moving your stairs to a more traditional location outside the porch.
I think that the distinction we would want to make is that because this is a front porch, that it doesn't look like a deck, and so it needs to be enclosed at the bottom if it's elevated.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's going to help the front elevation. It'll look more finished. Like, I think that'll make it look better to have the actual porch with the elevated area.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention the large swaths of siding on the sides and whether or not you considered using a different texture or size of siding in the gable ends.
I hadn't specifically. I was hoping that with enough windows that there was enough breakup there. As far as different styles of siding and whatnot, typically when I do some builds that are not infill, I like to do board and batten, for example, on the gables to break some of that up. But from what I understood, that type of siding is not permissible within infill housing. So I didn't really go that route, but that would be one way to go about it. I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're implying or.
I wasn't implying necessarily, but I think as an accent piece, board and batten has been approved before. It's just discouraged to be used on the whole exterior.
Okay, gotcha. I'm happy to add that in there. I mean, I would prefer it and myself. So if that's permissible, then I could definitely make that adjustment.
I will speak for the board and say that I think it's permissible.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve per staff recommendations and add the requirement of elevating the front porch and also including the differentiation of the material at the end gables.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Is there one more? Okay, next up, we have 225 East Oldham Avenue, which is case number 11H24IH.
So this is an identical design to the previous review, same applicant. This is a duplex fronting East Oldham Avenue. And so I'll run through the findings that are different. In general, the one element here, the building is proposed to be 25 feet from the front property line, with the front porches at 17 feet. The average of the block face is 33.4 feet. The adjacent houses are 31 and 29 feet. So the building should be moved towards the rear property line to better align with the adjacent houses and have that streetscape. And the other different notes here, I just note this is a two-story structure on a block that has mostly 1.5 stories. However, this one has an 8-inch tall foundation, which in this instance will actually assist in reducing the building height compared to these adjacent houses, which have relatively tall foundations. And then the other elements related to the side elevations and the windows are applicable here. So the staff recommendation is to approve 11H24IH with the same conditions as the previous one. The site plan meets city engineering standards. A revision to the front setback to better align with the block face. The porch supports be revised in size or design to better align with the context. Revision to the side elevation window placement. And then final site plan to include the tree in the front and rear yards.
Thank you, Lindsay. Are you still there?
I am.
Oh, thank you. Does he need to restate name and address or anything? Okay. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments on this one?
No, I can make all the same adjustments as discussed on the prior plan as well, if that is, recommended or preferable.
Great, thank you. Does the board have any other comments?
Lindsay, do you have a street view of this one? Yeah. The only reason I ask is I think, if I remember correctly, there's a set of stairs that go up to the front of the property. So having two front doors, what would be the kind of the plan to address that?
I just have as of right now, we have a sidewalk that stems from those stairs and then branches off into the two porches.
I had only one real concern on this. I like adding density. We need it desperately. But I did not comment on the last one about the height of the building being inconsistent with the block. On this block, since it's an elevated site, I'm concerned that that's really going to add to the perception of this as being a very tall building relative to its width and set up. I haven't counted the stairs there, but it looks like we're probably, 6 feet up to start with. I do appreciate the reduced foundation height to try to compensate for that, but that's my only real concern on this one. And I do support your comment about adding the same design elements we discussed on the last one.
This is a good example of these two houses that are here about the front porch that creates that social space on the front of the building and becomes part of the building. And I think that's what the previous comments were about, making sure that that front porch was lined with the front door and then infilled, if you were looking for an example of what they're intending.
Okay.
Lindsay, can you flip to the front elevation, please?
The
No,
only
I
thing-
just wanted to kind of get a feel for the scale again.
Yeah, I was going to just commenting on Perry's comment. The only thing that would help this is that the pure elevation of that front will never be read like that. Luckily, that it's cascading back to the ridge line, so maybe the perpendicular gable that actually faces the street would help the scale. But I mean, yeah, it certainly is going to be 2 stories compared to 1.5, like or whatever there are next to them. It'll be taller.
Yeah, it would definitely be taller, for sure, like you guys are saying. I'm not quite sure what to do about that because, the height is the height of this particular plan.
I don't think, although it's quite a bit taller than the other houses, the scale of the design overall, I don't think is out of proportion with the scale of the adjacent houses.
I agree with Suzanne, especially when you look at the housing on the right that's raised, it looks almost 6 feet off the ground before it becomes a full story with a pretty prominent gable. So it'll be bigger, but I don't think it'll be out of scale. I don't think it'll dominate, right?
Right. I think the width helps that, and having 2 units that are defined bays helps that too. Any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation, adding the 2 changes that were made to the last one on the porch and the differentiation material up in the gable.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, actually?
Sure.
Before I leave, as far as the breaking up, on the gables on the side with that board and batten, could I do that on the front gable as well, or no?
This is my personal opinion, but yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't think that contradicts with any of the design guidelines, so I think that would be fine.
I think it would actually add to it. It's really a common tool to add decoration to these buildings.
Okay, noted. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our main event, and now we have a workshop to do. So we will adjourn the proper meeting